We are here with Paul Peterson. So he is actually in America and US, and it's very specialist. It's something very different.
I've done market research and customer insights my entire career. A phenomenon that I saw where in any group or any interview series, there'd be like one or two individuals that kind of just got it.
The specific customers we're talking about is the catalytic customers.
I have spent most of my career focused on innovation, and that's innovation in products, innovation in messaging, innovation in experiences.
Try to create something new. We need to start with questions, not with answers.
Innovation isn't just new stuff, right? It's not about more, it's about better.
I think that the trap is where a lot of the business is in now.
You gotta be bold. Be bold or be forgotten.
Thank you everybody for watching the Vino Visionary episode. Today we are here with Paul Peterson. So he is actually in America and US, and it's very specialist. It's something very different. He has been actually a research for consumers for a long time, like customers research, but now he's particularly focused on one type of customer. Exactly. I'm right now, Paul. What's exactly type of customers you focus on?
Well, that's great. I want to get into it. Yeah, thank you for that, and it's great to be part of this. Yes, I'm probably a bit of an outlier, as you point out, from your typical podcast guest. You know, I have been around the wine industry for a very long time, working with a lot of different wine clients, but I'm not a wine professional. I'm not in the wine industry. I started off actually. I've done market research and customer insights my entire career, starting out in advertising. I worked in automotive, so on BMW, and then moved that into working a lot of tech brands and B2B brands, so Google and HP and Amazon and things like that. But I've kept my toe in the wine business because of where I live and because of my own passion. So I worked with, initially way back when, with Bolla, the Italian wine brand, and did a lot of work with Gallo during my advertising years, and with Diageo before they sold off their wine portfolio, as well as recently some work with the Wine Institute. And I'll go into a lot more detail about all that kind of stuff. But I often say, you know, whether it's sedans or software or Sauvignon Blanc, the issues are kind of the same, right? It's really about sort of making sure you know who your consumer is, making sure that you stand for something, and that importantly stand out from your competitors, or in the case of wine, from alternatives to wine. So I have spent most of my career focused on innovation, and that's innovation in products, innovation in messaging, innovation in experiences. And it's also been my observation that many of my clients would agree that a lot of innovation is kind of starts with guesswork and ends with a gamble, and you hope that it works. And it's my contention that shouldn't be that way, which is what led me to the concept that I wrote a book about called The Catalytic Customer. And that was I think your first question, which is really, what's the catalytic customer? Well, it's a book that I wrote that came from my lived experience as an insights professional. It's a phenomenon that I saw over and over again, across literally thousands of different categories, thousands of interviews, just as many focus groups. And often it was kind of just this happenstance thing, an unpredictable thing, a phenomenon that I saw where in any group or any interview series, there'd be like one or two individuals that kind of just got it. Like they would say something and the light would go on, and it'd be like, yes, that's what I'm looking for. That's the insight I'm trying to find. And there was just something about their experience, their perspective, their attitude that really sort of accelerated the whole process. It gave us this unique insight that we were searching for otherwise by doing a whole long series of interviews or multiple focus groups in multiple cities and things like that. So I initially chalked that up to just luck and a little bit of my skills as a moderator. But over time, I set out to see if I could actually try to kind of specifically find those people, systematically, reliably, so that we could learn from them as efficiently as possible. So particularly when the focus was on innovation or improving things or trying to push things forward, those are the people we wanted to get to. And to my satisfaction over the years, I proved that out, and that became the subject matter of my book. How to identify who they are, how to identify them, how to engage with them, how to leverage their insights to maximum effect.
So just to make sure we understand the definition. So you were pretty much like, just to make sure you're a specialist on this, and then it's amazing how much work you have done in so many different types of company, but including a lot of work in the wine industry. About customers. That's exactly what's the main topic for everybody talking about customers these days, because we need more customers for the wine industry. So, and then the specific customers we're talking about is the catalytic customers. That's exactly the customers. What exactly, if you can just define a concept for us, for somebody who never heard that word before, who actually those people are, what's that what they do, and why we should pay attention then. So just to give a little bit more towards the definition, so we understand exactly what the type of customers you're talking about it.
Sure. Yeah. I write about this in the book, but I kind of boiled it down to three primary characteristics. I call it engagement, enablement, and disposition. So, and they can be identified and screened for. But catalytic customers they're pretty mainstream customers. They're not early adopters, and I'll talk about that in a second. But they're people who are engaged. They've been around in the category for some time. They've been drinking wine for a while. They've incorporated it into their lives, things like that. So they have some lived experience to draw from. They're also enabled. Their enablement is such that, at least in wine, they have the ability to participate. They live near wine regions, perhaps. They have access to a variety of choices. They participate and attend wine events or wine dinners or things like that. They're not extreme, but they just have the financial and demographic wherewithal to participate actively. And then most importantly, they have this disposition. And this is the key thing, because it's kind of a psychographic profile. There are people who really are just interested in trying to help you, who are really there to solve problems. They know what works and what doesn't work. And they are advocates for that. They really want to push companies and brands and industries to do better. And it's not critical. They're not complainers. They're people who actually have this attitude of, like, if I could get my voice across, and I have these ideas that I want people to learn from, and they exist in every category, and they're identifiable. Now they're different, and here's a key part of it. So they're different from, there's other, in the world of marketing, there's a lot of related concepts, early adopters, influencers, in B2B, subject matter experts, things like that. But let me talk about it specifically in terms of early adopters, because it's tempting to kind of confuse the two, catalytic customers and early adopters. Early adopters are what we all know as the people who go out and buy things because they're new, right? They're driven by novelty. They're the people we hear about, lining up at the Apple store before the next iPhone comes out. They're the people who pre-order the next game before it gets released. They're the people who are just, their whole fulfillment in life is just to try new things, partly for bragging rights, partly because that's just who they are as people. So they're really novelty focused. By contrast, catalytic customers are what I call utility focused, meaning they're driven by usefulness and problem solving. They buy things because they need them or want them to do something for them. They evaluate products based on their relevance to solving their problems or to addressing their needs. Now, utility in a lot of categories is, like, and a lot of this came from initially my work in technology. Utility in the technology business has some very finite and concrete things you can see and measure. Does the product work the way you think it should? Is the feature set full and complete? Does it do what you need to do? Utility in the wine business is a little broader, a little bit more esoteric, but it really is still about how well does the wine or the wine brand or what I'm choosing fit into how I live my life, in my lifestyle, in my choices. How does it fit into my world, my social dynamics, etc. So they look for kind of fit. fit and utility, fit with their lifestyle, fit with their values, fit with how their culinary tastes and diets, and also fit and appropriateness with their social circle. So they are people who do know, and are often the people who choose the wine, because they're the people they know, okay, my friend doesn't like X and such types of wine. So they're driven, as opposed to their early adopters who were novelty driven. Catalytic customers are really fit or utility driven. And there's another, so there's a related concept in there. I mentioned influencers, and that's one is also could be tempted to think about catalytic customers as influencers. And to an extent, they do influence, right? But influencers that we in common parlance, right, are those people who's really designed to spread the word about products. They're often in a paid situation. They have audiences of large numbers of people. Their influence is kind of based on shaping trends or driving trends, or sort of social proof of a product's viability, or things like that. So that's an influencer. Catalytic customers, because they're knowledgeable and know a lot, and have social connections, can influence, and that's where the catalytic part of catalytic customer partly comes into play. But they aren't influencers. They aren't paid. In fact, they would run away from you if you tried to pay them to endorse your product. They aren't those kinds of people. They are interested in endorsing, in an informal way, your products when your products fit somebody's lifestyle, fit their needs. They're going to embrace the brands, the products, the wines, the wine companies that they feel are really sort of fitting their definition of what wine should be. So that's the difference. They influence others, but they aren't influencers, and they would bristle at being labeled influencers.
So they pretty much advocate for the brand.
They advocate for the right products, and if a brand fits, they will advocate for the brand, but they tend not to be particularly brand loyal. You have to keep serving them and servicing them and being relevant to them for them to stay in your franchise, right? They aren't promiscuous like an early adopter might be, but they are, they're willing to look elsewhere. And in fact, we talk about catalytic customers, or I talk about catalytic customers often as not my client specific customers. They may not be your brand's customers. They're catalytic customers in a category. So these might be, wine drinkers who really understand where wine should be and are really interested in changing the marketing or the way wine is portrayed. And they aren't necessarily loyal to you as a brand, but they're going to talk to you because they want you to be driving that. They want you to be sort of improving your messaging or thinking about innovative new ways to serve customers and get wine into the hands of people who could enjoy it as much as they do, and things like that.
And that's pretty much a great opportunity for companies then, if you can focus on the people who actually can give you the answers, but not necessarily the answers you say like, oh, you're great, keep doing the same thing, but actually give like what we call constructive feedback.
Right.
I think that's what catalytic customers can offer to the brand, is actually this constructive feedback that's not necessary is going to say you're amazing, but those people actually have the answers, and then pretty honest as well, because most of people don't like it, to be honest. There is a book where it's like, don't ask me like what if your product is good. I forgot the name of the book, but they say something like this, like if you ask your mom what you're gonna do, it's gonna be good, your mom's gonna say, yes, keep it doing, yeah, I'm very proud of you.
Right. Yeah, and that's where I really talk about catalytic customers purely in the context of innovation and change, right? Because they're a catalyst. They are the people that you need to listen to evolve and change. If all you want to do is feel good, you got your loyal customers to talk to you. You got people who are giving you feedback. You got your wine club members who are signed on and happy to be part of your tastings and get their wine delivery every so often. they're not looking to change. They've already bought in, right? Catalytic customers are really, they're interested in where things are going. They know that wine is losing some relevance among certain segments. They know that there's not as much innovation in wine as there should be. They know that there's, or they have values that, they can see the wine industry lagging behind in terms of sustainability and that kind of stuff. They're aware of that, and they're pushing for that. So they're not telling you, hey, everything's great. They're telling you there's some issues, but they're not complainers, and they're not whiners, and they're not going to like beat you up. They're suggesting, they're there is like, I want to work with you to fix this. Let's collectively be part of the change. And so they're very much driven by that. So they're very constructive, even though they are critical. And to your point, though, it does require an openness, because you got to be willing to hear that you're not great. You got to be willing to hear that things are broken, or that you're falling short, or you're disappointing, or, and you have to be open to that. And if you aren't, and there are, unfortunately, people in the industry, in any industry, who just don't want to hear that. They've committed so much to where they're headed and what they're doing and their tradition and the way they've always done things, that they're not that open. And, those people are never going to benefit from Catalytic customers, but the wine companies and brands and producers and others who are listening, they're going to be the ones who make the most difference, because Catalytic customers are there ready to give you advice, give you guidance and feedback, and work with you to change things.
And that is just the chapter 6 of your book. You talk about this loyalty trap. I think you explained that very well. It's just like the loyalty trap. It's just like listening to the people who love the way you are, and not listening to the people who can give you a feedback so you can improve yourself. But also, it's gonna damage your ego. Like, I don't know how to say that. Like, your ego is gonna be going, because a lot of the like, we all have ego, but I think in the wine industry, our ego, it's like, we are so great. I think we building that ego that I think it has been another fact is make us feel like we are special. And then there is a lot of that feeling. Wine is special. My winery is special. I am special. It's a harder for giving like a feedback. You're not gonna praise you or say like, hey, how good. And then part of how we are little as well. When we kids, we always say like, good job, and we're looking for that validation as well. So I guess it's a lot of things in the human.
Sure.
If you're not cautious about that, if you're not aware about that, you will never be able to open for feedbacks. It's not necessary. It's gonna say good job. Yeah,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I'm not saying,
The chapters, but feel free to add things or change my words.
Yeah. And it's human nature. We want praise, and there's nothing wrong with praise and positive feedback. I'm not saying, ignore the people who are telling you you're doing a good job, or don't take that, take some credit for that. That's still important. What I'm talking about in the book, when I talk about the loyalty trap, is literally in the context of innovation and change, right? Which is this kind of fallacy that your best customers are your best teachers. And that's really not true. Your best customers are often your best customers because they've bought into you, and they love you, and they're participating with you and just celebrating your products and what you're doing, and they like it. They aren't the people who are best suited. They might have some ideas, but they're not the best suited to uncovering new ideas and new things, right? I'm not saying that a wine club isn't a good tool. It is. And I'm not saying you should ignore your best customers. You should, absolutely. I mean, not ignore. You should pay attention to your best customers by all means, right? I mean, you're in the commercial business, and you need to continue to leverage that. So those are important tools, and paying attention to your loyal customer base, absolutely critical. But when it comes to trying to change and evolve, they're not going to be the people that push you. Catalytic customers are, right? Because, changing with your loyal customers means kind of upsetting your base a little bit, changing things. And people generally aren't comfortable with change, or the average customer isn't comfortable with change. And the average marketer is not that comfortable with change as well, let's be honest. But the more you can embrace a catalytic customer, the more you're going to get ideas for moving forward, because the world is moving and the culture is changing outside of your tasting room, outside of your wine club, outside of your franchise. And you do need that perspective, because if you don't, things are going to change and you're going to get left behind, which is one of the things that does occur in a lot of businesses. And I think especially in a tradition heavy business or industry like wine, it's very tempting to count on legacy and tradition and the way things have been done, and lose sight of we also need to be evolving and changing, not at the expense of the tradition, but don't rely solely on the tradition.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think the wine industry, if I don't know if it, maybe you know more than me because have you been working in different industry, but my knowledge is the wine industry is the most hold on heritage and tradition so much, because sometimes can be blind for how we can innovating and improve ourselves with the evolution of culture and people and generations, etc. With much slow and very slow space to do anything compared to art industry. That's my feeling. I'm not sure if that's maybe there is another industry that the same. Probably education industry. It's probably beyond that this slow space as well, and probably healthy as well, and very traditional way to think. Probably it's not just the wine industry, but particularly the wine industry has been a problem of because we told you that story, how important and people really how important it is the heritage and tradition. So it's almost blind us to see anything else. It's nothing else we put in there. It's harder for us to listen, because it's gonna against of the main values, if making sense. I think that's a problem with your value. But there is something in your book where you say some customers offer you praise, the best one give you homework. That's pretty much, I think, is the first page, second page. It's like open your book and you can read that. And then for me it was the most amazing one, because I think it's you're so right, and pretty much what we explained so far is towards that. So how we can get this constructive feedback to improve yourselves and innovate. But when you actually wrote that, what are your thoughts? Like, what's the because the wine industry has been very focused on the customers who they love the way the wine industry how it is, and also all about these validations about high score, positive reviews, like all this very much prestige who make us to feel so good about ourselves, and very special, because everything is about the best blah blah blah, the best this, the best wine communicator, the best blah blah blah. There is so many the best in the wine industry. Always have competitions to find who is the best sommelier. It's a very heavy culture of validation and praise.
Yeah.
I wanted to challenge the people see other perspective. Maybe they already thought but never pay attention about this culture in the wine industry, because I think that's something we need to listen for a professional specialist in customers. So we've been doing the same things because some customers offer you praise, and definitely that some customers really offers a praise, but the best ones give you homework. So how we can actually make that phrase to fit well in the wine industry, where we heavily validation, score positive reviews, love it so much, love and think we are so special.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but I mean, first off, yes, the some customers give you praise, the others offer you homework is kind of the thesis of the whole book, right? It's the notion of catalytic customers are the ones who are going to give you homework, meaning give you stuff to work on and change. That's true in the customer part of the business, it's also true in the industry, right? Like there's a lot of temptation to just kind of bring in the accolades and bask in the glow of good scores and good ratings and good reviews and that kind of stuff, right? And that's used then too often by wine marketers and wine brands kind of as a surrogate to marketing to customers. Like, we're good because we got this score. We are good because, we got a 90 at this competition, whatever, right? And that's a pretty poor way, in my opinion, of connecting meaningfully with customers, right? It's assuming that customers care as much about the scores as you do, and they don't really, right? It's also very inwardly focused, even though companies are trying to say we're customer centric. Those are kind of really not customer centric notions, right? It's sort of like, hey, look what other people think of us. Like, it's asking customer or giving customer feedback is really like customers love us, isn't being customer centric. That's just kind of tooting your own horn and pounding your chest and saying, look at how good we are. I think there's a recognition, at least amongst a good number of companies and brands in the business, that has to change, right? Doesn't mean that those kind of accolades and those awards aren't useful and valuable for some proof point, but they can't be the centerpiece of your marketing, and they aren't the things that are going to propel you to being more customer centric, right? So that's where I really believe that you've got to get into what is it that customers really care about and what do they need to hear. And that's where broad, mass market research and that kind of stuff isn't really going to give you the answer, because you can try very hard to get ideas from the marketplace, but it's going to be happenstance. It's going to be by chance. Whereas if you can hone in on the people who do have, like, these catalytic customers that have the lived experience and a perspective and some experience in the category, they're going to guide you. They're going to give you that homework. They're going to help you try to figure out how to improve things. And that homework can take many forms, right? It can be improving your communications and being more customer centric, and be improving your sort of the innovation of your products. It can be different packaging, it can be novel distribution strategies, you kind of name it. It can be all kinds of things. And that kind of thing is evidence of caring about your customer and serving your customer's needs a whole lot more than the scores or the accolades or the ratings and things like that.
No, yeah, no, that's good. And there's other thing as well within the book about like these new technologies. Let's talk about the technologies going to come into many industries, and it's changing everything, how we work, how we believe, how we buy. Everything is changing so in the fast space in the moment. And now we have the synthetic personas versus real customers, and like how this whole world, how do you see as your vision? Because yeah, we need to prepare ourselves as well for some of the technologies come along, and let's talking about this synthetic personas customers.
Right.
How much the difference between if you take things so serious compared to real customers, what we gain, what we lose, what's the benefits, what's the negative side of doing this.
Sure. Well, let me start by saying, I've been working in and around the tech business for a very long time as well. And partly because of that, and partly because I have seen the goods and the bads of it, I'm pretty optimistic actually about the impact of AI on where things are going. Now, with some cautions and some trepidation like everybody else, but I'm pretty bullish on where it can go. And certainly in the insights world that I operate in, it's topic number one is, can we replace all the stuff we ever did in market research with AI? Can synthetic users and personas and modeling substitute for everything we've ever done? And are we all going out of business? Here's the thing. Synthetic personas are great for efficiency, and there's uses of them, but they are terrible for empathy, right? They do not really reflect humanity, right? They're built from averages and probabilities and models, and catalytic customers and the need for innovation is everything but average, right? It's about breaking through and new and novelty and new ideas. So you need to find people who can challenge you, who can reveal shortcomings, who can surface issues that AI is never really going to be able to do. There's as I said, our industry's been focusing on this for some time. So a few months ago, and I think I wrote a blog post about this, but I decided, okay, let's experiment with synthetic users as if they were participants in a qualitative market research project. So I followed all the rules of setting up personas and coming up with synthetic users. So I created a whole series of them in a category that I'm quite familiar with. So I chose running shoes and running equipment and timers and things like that. So it's an area that I participate in. I know a lot about. So I created these synthetic users and interviewed them as if I were interviewing a normal person in the course of a qualitative interview. And it was really fascinating, right? And very informative, because what happens is synthetic users answer every question with the utmost confidence, right? There's no answer. There's no hesitation. I've got the information. I'm going to turn it back to you. I'm going to quickly synthesize an answer. I'm going to give it to you. And every synthetic user is drawing, essentially, even though they have different personas, they're drawing from the same database, if you will, of knowledge and information, right? So ultimately what you get is this kind of sort of milquetoast level of suggestions and ideas that kind of feel like everybody's saying the same thing, and you're not really getting ideas. You're not getting anything that's breakthrough, especially, which is important when you're trying to innovate and change, right? Contrast that with interviewing real people, which I do a lot, right? Which I do mostly. When you interview a real person, they hesitate. They'll answer a question, or their body language might show you they're not sure they completely believe what they're saying, or they'll contradict themselves, or they'll hem and haw, or they'll change their mind, or they'll just hesitate completely. And as a trained moderator, I'm trained to look for those. Those are those moments where you're really wanting to probe deeper. Like, why did you hesitate there? It doesn't look like you really believe, you're not convinced that you're right. And you challenge that, because that is the fertile territory where ideas come from. That's where innovation comes from. Not from, I have all the answers. It's from, I don't have the answer, or I'm concerned about this, or it's the emotion around it. So that's, and having the empathy to identify with real people is the key to innovation. And that's where I don't think synthetic users, while they have lots of uses, I don't think are the appropriate or most appropriate tool to really efficiently generate your innovation roadmap. Now, it's great for brainstorming new ideas and coming up with a random set of concepts and things like that. But it really, if what you're trying to do is innovate in such a way, innovate in messaging or products or experiences in such a way that it really is effectively touching customers, synthetic users aren't going to be able to do that for you, in my opinion. At least not any in my lifetime or in my career, the rest of my career, I don't believe.
I guess it's because something I wanted to just phrase again what you said is because for us to try to create something new, we need to start with questions, not with answers. If there is not a homework with a lot of questions for you to think and developing or something like that, that is not really innovation, I guess, because we should love it more question than answers. That's how we keep innovating. But somehow we love answers more than questions, and because it's feel like we have the answer, it's good, feel good, we find the answer. and then it's just that desire for answers, and probably can be like a trap as well, because in the time you have the answers and you stop to looking for to questions, you stop it to innovate as well. Because if you have every answer, all the answers, so why you're gonna looking for something else? Like, why you're gonna innovate? And I think that the trap as well, a lot of the businesses in now, so they have all the answers themselves what they want to go. They don't have the questions without answers, and they're not looking for that questions either. And I think that's the difference, at least for me, how you explain that. That's how I understand. It's It's really innovations. You have the questions, you don't know the answer, so you're looking for that answer. So that's how you create something new. So it's
Yeah.
pretty much that process we need to go through when you talk about innovation.
Yeah, and it's also as well, I mean, it gets back as well to the definition of what innovation really is, at least in my mind, right? Innovation isn't just new stuff, right? Innovation is different improvements in ways that meet people's needs differently. Innovation, novelty alone isn't enough. I mean, if it's just coming up with ideas, we can come up with ideas galore, right? We can run a brainstorming sessions. We can use AI to generate as many ideas as possible. What you're trying to do, at least in the commercial world, is innovate in such a way that that it increases the resonance and attachment to your customers. It generates revenue. It gets them to be loyal. It makes them want to buy you or pay for you or stay with you or become more loyal to you. So it is about changing things or improving things or even coming up with new ideas, but new ideas that resonate, right? Because one of the things that I talk about a lot is, in the world of AI now, coming up with ideas is easy, right? But
Yes.
reality of the business world, and this is true across most industries, is you got to place your bets then on the ones that are going to have the most impact, right? Unless you have unlimited budgets and immeasurable time for experimentation, you got to place your bets the right way. And that's, it's not about more, it's about better. So
Yeah.
that's really, I think, where Catalytic customers kind of play the biggest role. And that's certainly true in innovation, in the wine industry innovation as well. It's, it's not just, hey, let's see how many different kinds of packages we can come up with. It's, let's really understand what is it that people are trying to, how does wine need to fit into people's lives better, and let's work on that, and not let's try this color versus that color versus this color, this size versus this, or this package versus that. That's just a huge waste of time. And I work with no clients who have an excess of money, who are willing to just throw money at experimentation. I mean, there are probably a few, but they're few and far between.
Yeah. What is about shaping message and positioning? So Catalytic customers seems to play a big role in shaping not just product but also brand storytelling. So how we can fit that in the wine industry, um, when the narrative is everything, like
Mhm.
how we can refine in the message and position the brand by using the Catalytic customer as a base.
Well, I think that to me is probably the primary application of Catalytic customers in the wine business, is improving messaging and positioning and the narrative, right? Because it seems like, despite many companies' best efforts, they're still talking often, their story is about themselves. It's still terroir, it's still tradition, it's still tasting notes, it's still very like us focused, right? Whereas if you ask a Catalytic customer to talk about wine, they're going to talk about their experiences, where they were, how they enjoyed it, what it felt like, what they thought about, what it reminded them of, how it made them reminisce about their travels to the wine regions in France or whatever it is, right? And that's where they're key. And if marketers in the wine business were to actually listen to that and then play that back, in ways that aren't about just, this grape was grown on the rocky soils of such and such and in this conditions, and we blended it with this. If they start talking about, why the wine was created and how it's intended to fit into, a person's lives, that's going to have more resonance with a customer these days than just the facts of how the wine was made. It gives it sort of more credible and contemporary and even contagious kind of messaging. And I think that's really where I think Catalytic customers are going to come into play most effectively in the wine business. Just to illustrate that point, I last week or the week before, my partner and I went to a wine event here in Sonoma, and it was
Yeah.
great wines. It was 35 local producers of Rhone varietals, right? So a lot of
Yeah.
what was it, Syrahs and Viogniers and Grenaches and things like that. All really good, tasty, wonderfully well-crafted wines, and we had plenty to taste. 35 different wineries. And, I went in also partly just as a consumer, but also as a researcher. And it was really fascinating to me that, so it was all set up with tables where usually the winemaker and maybe a marketer or somebody in the business from each
Mhm.
winery was pouring. And almost to a table, they immediately went into the nuts and bolts of how the wine was made, what went into it, what percentage of what grape went into it, where it was grown, all that sort of wine speak, which granted, it was a knowledgeable set of customers, sort of participating in this and doing the tasting. But literally, because it was also a Rhone tasting, literally everybody's wine was essentially the same with very little difference, right? In terms of that experience. And nobody told their brand story. Nobody told, a really fascinating story. And I walked away from that. My partner and I walked away from that. And she and I were looking at each other like, I don't remember which ones I liked now because I can't remember the brand names. There was nothing to grasp onto other than, yeah, I really like Syrahs, so that is one of the problems that's endemic and so widespread in the wine business still, even though every company would say they're trying to be customer centric and they were friendly people, but none of them told the story. So, I had this vision for like the alternative version where you would walk up to a table and they would engage with you and sort of talk about what made that wine special to them. This wine turns a Tuesday dinner into feeling like a Friday night, or this wine is made by we made this wine because we care about sustainability or environment as much as you do, as opposed to it was sustainably grown and things like, if you could even just begin to turn it to a shared experience with the consumer, where you're talking their language or capturing their imagination or engaging in a story, that is going to be far more effective, I think. And that's ultimately, I mean, that's what a catalytic customer would tell you. And certainly that's, I think, my advice too. It's like, we need to switch from the kind of technical and fact-based stuff to humanity, and from just, hey, we're experts in this, to kind of an empathy with customers. And the more the industry can do that, I think the more successful ultimately everybody's going to be, and be differentiated and stand for something and be remembered and ultimately be adopted.
Yeah, I guess I did actually a post about him with a very analogy. I can feel like the wine industry is like, like we're going out with someone like a like a new girl or boyfriend or whatever, and they
Mm-hmm.
start to talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, look at me! I'm awesome. I go to the gym every day. I have the car X car that year, and I earning blah 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 per year. I eat very healthy. I blah, and and you just look at that person that yeah, sure, yeah, and then they will never make questions for you. They just tell like you how awesome they are, and you feel like I don't think the wine industry learned or losing it's becoming blind because we are doing the same thing. It's like if people just going to meet the person, you just like, look, I am awesome, I have the best
Yeah. Yeah.
was tires climate, I have it X points, so it's cause
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of the same
Here are the
analogy.
reasons you should like me. Right.
Yeah, that's all the reasons you love me, because
Yeah.
you should it's like you almost like marry me. Like it's like you're going to ask someone to marry you, so you need to tell how good you are at the gym and your work. At you have a on a house. It's like and you didn't even ask anything like that. Like you just
Right.
give like everything they wanted to do to
Exactly.
just make sure the girl or the boy were interested. Don't go away. Just married you in the same way, like. And then that's kind of the same situation when I start to think the analogy with doing the wine industry. And we forget when you meet someone, you need to ask the questions and also see interesting about that person in front of you, because they're gonna tell you a lot of the things you can actually shape your narrative according with the interest of the person in front of you. And I think that conversation is still missing. And yeah, and definitely and that if you listen more, you're probably going to find a lot of these catalytic customers telling us a lot of the things about themselves. We could actually improving your narrative and shaping
That's
things very
exactly.
different. Because yeah, I feel the same. Like I'm going to these big wine fairs. We have 400, 600. You just 35. We have thousands sometimes.
Hmm.
5,000 exhibitors in wine Paris last year. And then how, and everyone say the same thing, like, oh, wine is 12 months in the Chardonnay oak is like, great. You want the same as your neighbor, the same thing. There is nothing really, really different of each other, but we do believe that's because it's 12 months of Chardonnay on the oak, it's became special. And that's an illusion as well. There
Yeah.
is a very interesting point where you talk about method position, how catalytic customer can help, because I see if you just open or to listen, we actually be able to understand this wine is about customers, about
Mhm.
themselves. It's not about how great you look at it to show off to our customers, because that's how probably some lot of people feeling like we're just showing
Mhm.
off. And I think that's the supportation there, for how we can improve the way we shape and position a message by just listening to Catholic customers where they are honest
Mhm.
and give you actually a feedback for you to grow.
Yeah.
So when talking about this, the same thing, when you talk about customer centricity, so can you just, I know we were already talking about that. It's pretty much became a very, the whole conversation about customers and how business talking about they are customer centric, but they are not. Um, can you just make it like example? You don't need mention names or anything. It's just an example, like how you feel, what, like, I think there is two different, what the winery thinking and what the customer thinking. If you can describe it for us, why the winery who are running the business think they are customer centric, and why the customers feel like rejected by the winery. Can you just give that scenario to understand why the customer centricity in the wine industry still fail a lot?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I mean, there's a number of things to unpack there as well. But part of it is, the wine industry, because creating good wines or wines in general requires a level of expertise and knowledge and specificity. It is tempting to rely on that to tell your story, right? It's we do this, we do, lots of choices are made. There's some amazing talent and knowledge that goes into crafting wine, but that's not necessarily what customers need to hear. They want to know, does the wine fit? Does the wine work? And instead, as we hear a lot, they kind of get tested. It's like this test, like you have to reach this bar of knowledge before we'll sell to you. We're not telling you a story that invites you in. And we're making it intimidating. Now, it's interestingly enough, I did a big project, as I said, a while ago, about trying to make sure or try to understand how to keep or invite millennials and Gen Xers into the category, right? And it's not that they want to discount the tradition and the beauty of wine and all the stuff that makes wine special. They like that, they respect that. They just don't want to have to be quizzed on it to embrace it, right? So that's there's a disconnect between kind of knowledgeable people who create wine trying to do the right thing. They're trying to explain why their wine is good and different, and these are factors that indeed scientifically make a difference in wine, but they're a disconnect, because it's like scientists talking to non-scientists. It's analogous to the tech industry, where engineers would really love to tell every customer about all the different features that it has and why those are there, when in fact a customer is really interested, a technology buyer is really interested in, okay, how does this solve a problem? So there's that goes on at one level, which is just kind of this level of expertise disconnect. The other phenomenon, I think, one of the things that happens, and the reason it's hard for a lot of wine companies and in every industry, for a lot of companies to truly be customer centric, is it's very hard to understand what that actually means, because there's this overwhelming amount of input. Like, we should do this, we should do this. There's opinions galore. There's wine writers, there's experts, there's opinion leaders, there's wine owners, there's the domineering wine families who are telling you it needs to be this way. Then there's your own data and your sales, which show you what's happening but not why and how to address it. And then there's an attempt to do customer research or surveys, or have people fill out satisfaction surveys or comment cards when they visit and things like that. But that's not giving clear direction. And the sheer amount of volume of data and overwhelm, combined with what do I do with it, and I don't really understand it, is precisely why I keep preaching. Let's go to the catalytic customers first. They aren't going to be your volume customers, but they're going to help you figure out where you prioritize, which input to actually incorporate, what to pay attention to.
It's like a filter, like a filter for us to filter what information we should take it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, keep going. We just wanted to say, like, is it like a filter, so we can use it like the customer, like the catalytic customers, as a filter to make sure we are getting the right message. But yeah, we'll keep going, please. It was interesting.
Well, one of the other things I want to say, I don't know if it's completely germane to what you're asking, but it's a temptation, I think, and I've seen it in certain wine brands, to say, okay, we want to be customer centric. Let's forget everything we ever knew about wine, and let's market it this way. Let's completely, let's put it in cans and make it sexy, and forget what makes it special, and just serve it up at the beach, right? And while some of that innovation's appropriate, and I'm not discounting alternative packaging, when it's divorced from or devoid of all the stuff that makes wine special, you're not wine anymore. And in fact, one of the things we learned in the research that we did is, customers, even younger customers, still cherish the tradition. They just want it more accessible. They want it maybe in smaller packages, a bottle where I can just, a single serve kind of thing, or they want it to the taste profiles to be not so complex, for instance, or things like that. They're not asking you to forego all the history and heritage of wine. They like that, and that's part of the enjoyment that wine provides. So don't go so far in the other direction that your customer centricity means losing sight of who you are as an industry.
Yeah, I think it's just find the way balancing between. I think the problem with the tradition is sometimes we ignoring anything else, and you just guilty the tradition, and then the thinking that's something it's need to be aware. We need to fight it. If you worry about those things, you're probably much easier to get the right space. You just need to be aware. What's your customer's value? What's the way you're going, and and then try to find the balance between those things, but just to be aware of those things and make the right questions.
Right. My next question is easy to default to just hiding behind tradition and not changing. So yeah, absolutely, I agree with you.
Yeah. The other thing as well I want to talk about it. It's like how, like for example, if I'm a producer, how are we going to identify the catalytic customers by their behavior, like how they behave, like in the everyday. So I know when I'm talking one of those customers, I should pay attention, because it's sometimes hard as well, the feedbacks you should listen to, because all the negative feedback is actually good for improve yourself. How you can actually it's great to be praised and say how good you are. It's great. We all feeling good about that. I am too. But when they have someone to tell you like a constructive feedback so you can improve yourself, so they have some people who you should not listen and some people you should listen. How I can figured out by behavior
Hmm.
or by any signs or anything you want to share. So that is actually the type of customer. This is the catalytic customer, so they can help me to innovate. And this is cut off the customers. It's not the customers you never is not my type of customers. It's I
Hmm.
should just to how I have because it somehow we say target people.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should go to a target. Like you should have like a message you wanted to reach a specific type of people. So it's I just wanted to explain that the difference between target catalog customers, what we can working together, which feedback I should listen, what I shouldn't ignore, and how I can identify that by behavior
Right.
or any other signs is going to help me to understand the customer that should pay attention.
Hmm. Yeah, and I'll try to distill this into a couple minutes because it is, in fact, this is really the entirety of the consulting business that I'm running, is helping clients understand who to listen to, how to discern what a good input is, and what not good input is, where to find people, things like that. So the high level answer is, and I write about this in the book, there's two areas you need to look for catalytic customers. One is internal and one is external. So internally, it is about discernment and listening to the customers in your wine club, for instance, or who come to your tasting room or you interact with regularly, who are regular purchasers, but people who are giving you more feedback than just superficial praise. They're saying more things. They're engaging in a conversation with you about something beyond like, oh, I like this particular vintage. They're engaging in stories. They're asking you stories. That when they start asking questions, that's a cue to that's probably somebody worth engaging with and listening to. So there are people like that, and there are a small number of them, but they can be found and they exist in every in every interaction. And if your staff or you are trained to listen for that and then engage and perhaps even invite them into sort of longer conversations, that's sort of an internal conversation that's going to help guide your innovation. Then there's also the external stuff, and for that I have spent the last year and a half really sort of working on an algorithm of sorts. It's not really an algorithm, but it's a series of questions that can be used again in the engagement, enablement, and discernment categories. And I've got a 9-question version and a 15-question version that really can be tailored to every category, such that you increase your opportunity to find catalytic customers and score them. I call it catalytic scoring. People who you can then invite into all the types of modes of learning that we traditionally in the insights business use. So it can be, customer advisory panels, small interview projects, surveys, focus groups, co-creation workshops, that kind of thing. So they can be found, and if you're truly embracing the idea of changing, they are your best way forward. So it's a combination of internal and external. And it's also a little bit of combination of both art and science, but it can be done. And that's the high level version. There's a lot more detail if anybody ever listening to this podcast would be interested in learning about.
So it's a very it's complex because it's not easy. It's a lot
It's,
of
it's complex, but it's
study
not
to.
complex. It's about really just kind of paying attention and recognizing that more data is not going to give you the answer. The right input's going to give you the answer, right? And it's a shift in mindset. It's a framework as opposed to a strict. I absolutely have to get this precisely right. It's a shift in your thinking and the way you're approaching gathering information from customers.
Wow, yeah, and then building on classical innovation theory. So I have reading other books, and they have this book. I really love it, and even Stephen Butler, the guy from UK, the guy I'm very big fan of, um, talking about this book, and I think that's the book I really love. The Innovator's Dilemma
Hmm.
is a
Hmm.
book where he shows and even Peter Drucker as well is speaking about customers a lot. Is I think
Mhm.
that the two books, and I have read recently talking about customers. Um, so the innovative dilemmas then say something towards like, if you listen, and Peter Drucker say the same thing, if you listen so much to like the people um who you have it today, you
Mhm.
not necessary is going to be ready for the future. So
Yeah.
Peter
Mhm.
Drucker sometimes, even the book, he said like sometimes you need close one door to be able to open other door to be able to be open for the future.
Mhm.
Um, we see some in other business doing things like that, and even like innovating now, doing like these big luxury brands doing like yoga, yoga things and like yoga stuff, but like
Mhm.
other building different things and never being on towards sports or anything like that. But because they're the well-being industry has is going to be $90 trillion is forecasted for now in 2028. You're gonna see like all these luxury brands try to get something towards well-being and stuff like that, and then you see a lot of the other brands adapting to well-being industry by leasing this new generation who is completely different of the previous generation. This is just an example of
Mhm.
the different values between industries, and that's the innovative dilemma. And talking about it is it's because you running a business now where your customers now give you the money, making you sustainable and pay
Yeah.
the bills and everything like that.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Talking all the time, we should definitely listen to these people because that's the people who pay. But that's the dilemma the book is saying.
Sure.
You listen to those people, but what's going to happen to you if when these people is gone, you're not going to renovate with the because sometimes there's other people like Jay Z could not be as much have as much money or spend as much money in the wine or luxury wines as your 60 plus old boomers stuff.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
the dilemma I think the wine industry is going through now is like they still have it is the majority who buy wine to be on the baby boomers and the boomer side generations, and they love the things the wine industry, everything the wine industry is built. They love the values, everything has been done so far. And then we have these new generations. I'm on this millennial industry as well, who has been create completely different values, has been completely different way to think. We're not necessarily thinking what have we done in the past is necessarily the way we should go forward. We're making much more questions. We're redefining a lot of the things in society, including many things like work, how many hours, and you're gonna see like many people doing different stuff
Right.
now.
Yeah.
Now we have social media, we have influencers in social media where people can making money, jobs we didn't exist before. So what's this actually? So it's harder for the wine industry because they have a customer who pay the bills and they spend a lot of money because the generation is fading with it. The generation who's changing everything we think. It's I think one of the most tough time for business, to be honest.
Uh-huh.
It's is at the moment because we on
Yeah.
the evolution and because this very different of generations, and education is not a thing anymore because we decentralize the information. So everybody thinks whatever algorithm just tell you right and show you more what you wanted to believe, and then you make all these small beliefs of everybody thinking the same, like the every single group thinking the same way. It's very hard to tell, hey, you're wrong. You should believe in this centralized information. That's just not the case anymore. The way we live it today. So all this dilemma is what's happening now. And
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much everything we I have been stuck with, and half of people don't know what to do because it's harder for. And then even the innovative limit, they say good management it's can be bad. So it's actually the problem for big businesses, the good management, because they do the things they expected for them to do, but they also, because they expected the things the way to do, they can actually broke the business. And that's happened before, like Kodak.
Yeah, yeah,
Just to give the context to you, so Kodak was one of the business who created the digital camera, and but they didn't believe in the digital camera, the digital camera, so they let it go. And then then actually was the bigger business because they actually going against of the filming business in
yeah.
the head and back then. So
Right.
they believe the filming business is going to stay for another 10 years, and did not happen. And they lost everything because no one is using film anymore. Everybody
Yeah.
using digital cameras. So I I wanted to get your thoughts about that because I think it's a conversation you'd be interested to talk you as a catalytic customers and innovation driver.
Mhm.
How you see this whole talking and this whole challenges? We know it's a real challenging for the wine industry because we really going through generations, and we going through the very different products and different sides and different folds, and we are in a very big dilemma. So how the wine industry can use the concept of catalytic customers to manage the plastic
Right.
dilemma we're
Yeah.
going through now. And because it's like we spoke before, it's very heavily believe in the heritage and tradition, where the tradition and the traditions are being questioned now by the younger generation. So what's the position? How we can go from here?
Well, I mean, yeah. First
I know
off,
it's complicated.
no, no. Well, let me acknowledge that. I mean, in fact, I was just looking. You were talking. I have both the Innovator's Dilemma and one of Peter Drucker's books on my bookshelf over here. I have read them. It's been a while, but and there's a lot of great academic work and great thought in and around the business of innovation and what it means, right? And as my recollection of the Innovator's Dilemma is, it's really about kind of how companies get trapped in their own logic. They're focusing on their own customers, and they might miss something comes from the edges, right? And I think Peter Drucker's thing was largely, if I recall correctly, right, about like innovation failing because it's not about embracing new ideas; it's about letting go of old ideas. So there's similar kind of issues, right? And both of those, I think they're really good warning signs. There's really good thought provoking stuff in them, and so I have a great deal of respect for them. And I've read plenty of other innovation books as well. My orientation, and I think my advice to wine clients and the wine industry, is that's all great. Understand that really important academic stuff. It's kind of like going to business school to at least understand what you should be doing. But then you got to do the hard work, right? And I think that's my argument would be that the catalytic customers supplement that, right? So you've got this understanding of pitfalls and things that companies can do and how innovation can fail and the dilemma and all that kind of stuff, but that doesn't get you off the hook then for, okay, how do we stay relevant? And that, I think, is, from my perspective, really where the active engagement with catalytic customers comes into play, because those are the people who are going to be knowledgeable about the edge cases. They're going to be the people who know, they hear their friends are no longer drinking wine and they've gone to seltzers. They're the people who are going to be able to sort of give you the heads up, be the bellwethers of what's happening, and have suggestions for, okay, what they the reason they've done that, the reason my friends aren't drinking this, or the reason they haven't come into the category is X, and be really good to start working on those kinds of problems. So I see, sort of the concept of catalytic customers is entirely consistent with those management philosophies, but it's a tool. It's not intended to be its own model. It's really just a mechanism for, okay, knowing that that's going to happen, that there's this innovator's dilemma that you're going to confront. How do you move past it? And that's where I think catalytic customers come into play.
Yeah, no, great answer. My last thing for this podcast, because we already going through over an hour now, is your final advice for all of us. Like, if you could give me three key pieces of advice to wine business, try to identify and collaborate with the catalytic customers, what they be like? What's your advice will be? Give me three place
Yeah.
key pieces of advice if you
Yeah.
can.
Well, I'm going to, with your permission, just kind of flip the question a little bit. I'm going to answer from the perspective of the catalytic customer, right? I mean, this is what you would hear, and catalytic customers are also good at answering these issues as they raise them, right? But I think the three things, if I were to articulate them, the first is that in this category, like in technology, it's not so much what you do, it's how you fit, right? So it is literally about sort of emphasizing your role and your relevance, right? And that's, catalytic customers can help you guide to that, but it's really about why your wine fits into someone's life, why it belongs there, why they should. So it's about the fit. So really, that's the first part. Related to that is my second point, which is kind of you need to live your story as a wine brand, right? It's not just defining your story, but it's actually living it, embodying it in the way you market your wine, develop your wine, sell your wine, package your wine, communicate, etc. But it's about really embracing that and finding your why, your unique point of difference, all that kind of stuff. Because if you're just one of thousands of brands that are available to consumer, either you got to spend a whole lot of money to try to differentiate yourself, or you're going to just fail, right? You've got to have your story. You've got to live that story in everything you're doing. And then related to that is my third point, which I think is really about, you got to be bold or be forgotten, and boldness is key. And it's really tempting in the business world not to be bold, right? Because it's safer to hide behind the things we've always done. It's safer to default to tradition. It's safer to not disrupt the apple cart. It's safer to not take risks. But especially in a category like wine, it's a pretty rapid pace of, path towards just disappearing. And there's too many wine brands that should succeed, but that aren't, because they haven't been able to really take the risks that they should, and they haven't tried, and they're just disappearing in this morass, and it ends up a race to the bottom, or who can promote, or get their the wine on sale at the end cap in the grocery store. It's and that's not boldness. That's really a path towards disappearing. And boldness in any category, but particularly in a wine, in the category like wine, where there are so many options, is critical.
I guess it's the book. Just remind me the Blue Ocean. The book is like pretty much just say the same thing. Be bold, like be doing something different of everyone else. Like, yeah, I guess the wine industry. I get it's other thinking towards like validation. I think the feeling of validation is so strong on us humans. Be bold, it means you not be applause or not be validated, and that the risk is stopping a lot of the business just to try something different from what they want to. It's the validation. It's very hard. And then we never know, because if people don't accept it, and if you don't like it, and if you fail and we don't like it, they fail.
Right.
Feeling either. So I think with the innovations and something like validations, fails, all those words you need to put it on the table, because it's the feelings and the fears. So that's pretty much that fears stop us to be bold. But the bold, I agree, like all the brands that have been seeing, like you've been doing well on, everyone is in the crisis, and now is the one is actually be bold enough to just do something completely different of the others. And then Mr. Beast, when interviewed, he said it, like, if you're going to, he give you that situation. I just want to finalize with that analogy. I thought Mr. Beast did a very good analogy about how he does the YouTube videos. I don't know if you know him, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think the most famous YouTube in the world.
yeah.
And then he said, just imagining going to a place you have with so many cows, like you're not gonna say anything, like it's a cow, like cow, you don't say anything. But if you see a pepper cow, you're gonna tell your friends. You're gonna say, "Hey, Paul, I just see a pepper cow," and you're gonna
Hmm.
say your mom, and you're gonna tell everybody. I guess the bold is actually the pepper cow he's talking about. It's like if you see something different of unusual, you start to talking about it because it's a pepper cow. It's not like
Yeah,
a bunch of cows the same. So
exactly, exactly.
thank you so much, Paul, for your time.
It's been
I
my
really
pleasure.
appreciate it. I really appreciate your time to share with us about your book and literally about all your experience about catalytic customers. You have been in this industry for what, 30 years now?
38. But who's
38,
counting?
the 38 years, so you have a lot of things to share. So I will leave in the his LinkedIn profile as well in this video underneath. So if anybody wanted to contact him, you can just click him. And do you want to say anything else before I say thank you so much?
No, thank you for having me. And again, I want the industry to succeed as much as the wine industry does. So we're all in this together. And I'm here to offer encouragement, guidance, feedback, whatever is going to help us really kind of keep this industry alive and relevant into the next few centuries.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much for so much, Paul. Thank you so much for your time to share your knowledge with us.
Thank you.